Why here?
The truth.
Death for you.
What beauty!
And the
Whoa, yeah. Shit. I have a strong feeling these guys use Houdini. We actually do use Houdini a lot, and that was Axis Studio's Hyper Reel. That's 1 out of 3 reels, because we do so many different types of work, as you can see up here. It's all the different types of clients and projects, everything from animated features to Love, Death and Robots series on Netflix, visual effects projects, but the heart, it all starts with game cinematics and game trailers, which is what I'll be talking a little bit to you about today. Axis Studios has a headquarters in Scotland, not up on the hills, I wish. It would be quite cool, but it's in Glasgow. On the other hand, you can work from wherever you want. So it's a very hybrid and remote kind of studio. That's where I work. I work. There you go. So much for a great start. My name is Hudson Martins. Apparently, my photo was a bit too corporate, so I tried to find better ones. Did not go too well. I'm better taking photos than actually being them. There you go. That one is okay. And I've been in Axis Studios for 9 years now. My main role throughout that time was the head of FX, so helped build up the FX team from the ground up. I think we were 3 people when I joined in FX, and built up the team so we could do feature animated films to that level. I think we had 40 people at some point, usually between 20 and 30 FX artists with various kind of skill sets. These days, I do CG supervision, and mainly because I wanted to try new things. After 8 years as a head of department and doing FX, I really enjoy it, but I also want to understand how other departments work. So that's what I do more these days. That's enough about me. Why are we here? So we're talking about a project called Lightfall, which is a Destiny 2 kind of extension, and we'll be doing cinematics for those as well. I've divided the talk in 2 parts, mainly because it's easily forgotten. Before you start any project, there's a planning stage, and I do find that extremely, extremely important. I love Houdini. I do work with Houdini every single day, although I'm going to show you why the planning stage is so important, and then I'm going to show some cool effects and how we actually solve these problems and did those. Before we move on, thank you. Whoops, that was a double jump. Hey, thank you to Side Effects for making this possible, bringing myself and other way more talented people to talk to you about anything, really, and give you value, and hopefully inspire you to do great things. Thanks, Christopher, for the trust. Even though I never share any Houdini nodes, I only share kind of more leadership things. I appreciate for always being asked to come back. And thanks to Bungie, who are our client on this project. They both entrust us with a project, but also allow us to share behind the scenes, which is great for game companies. Right, let's dive into the project a little bit more. Our client is Bungie, and if you don't know Bungie, they're kind of one of the big game studios, and they're the creators of Halo and Destiny, Marathon, and other games as well. They asked us if we could do these 9 cinematics, total of 16 minutes of full CG work, working alongside the development of the Lightfall, the expansion. And we say, yeah, let's go. It sounds pretty cool. So that's what we got to do, and there's a lot of effects in those. It might not sound like a lot, but you'll see shortly. I would like to thank the senior team, both on Axis and Bungie. When you work on a long project like this, it becomes much more collaborative workflow. We share ideas, we get updates what's happening in the game, so we can reassure that we can align that with the Bungie's team as well. But let's not forget, the big bulk of the work that you see today is made by the team. So yes, we have the senior supervisors and directors and so on, but most of the work is made by the team, all the effects artists, all the different departments as well. So a huge thank you to everyone who was involved in the project and made it happen. And let's move on. The challenge. So this project had a few challenges on the effects side of things. When I got the script the first time, or even the first previews, we had an early previews, I looked at it and I thought, I'm not sure with the time allowance we have, we can actually do all this, because there's a high amount of complex effects in the volume, and all of these had to be developed, also implemented, wait for animation, make sure it all works. Shortly, you see why. There was a fair amount of unusual types of effects as well, very comp-heavy, with quite big art direction. Bungie and Destiny is such a cool game, because if you look at the art direction, it's quite different, but it does create some challenges in terms of, how to execute that on a cinematics level. Finally, our main character is this massive sphere. It's not our main character, but this sphere, which is called the Traveler, as you can see in the picture, is the first time it does anything in the game in terms of reacting or trying to defend the humanity and the Guardians. This is been running for 7 years, I believe, at this time. And this thing finally fights back, and it's fighting a bad guy. But it's a sphere, so it fights back using effects. And also the bad guy, called the Witness, is made of effects. So all of a sudden, effects is not just a supportive role in the project, we are helping tell the story. So all these things together became quite challenging, but it's quite cool. And you see one of the cinematics. I won't be able to show all of them today, because 60 minutes is too long, but this is one of the quite heavy with effects. So let's go.
There are too many of them!
On your left, on your left!
Vanguard to all units. Keep the enemy away from the Traveler at all cost.
is that? The witness.
Whatever that thing is, we gotta take it down.
Commander! I'm hit! Going down! Repeat, we're going down! Mayday! Mayday! Ah!
Disciple, you know what must be done.
They've found the veil. We don't have a choice. We're out of time.
Osiris. Don't die.
Yeah, I almost died when I read this first script. So, yeah, loads of challenges. Hope you enjoyed that. That was one of the cinematics we did, quite heavy on effects and quite a lot of complex effects. And whenever I got tasked with something like that, I try to see any projects, effects, or whatever you work on, CG supervision, as opening a restaurant. If you ever worked within a restaurant, any of you guys worked in a restaurant here? I can imagine some people. Yes, thank you, Bill. You know that if you open a restaurant at 12 noon, you actually have to be there way earlier, probably 5 a.m. or 6 a.m., prepping. You're literally preparing for the whole cooking you'll be doing throughout the day. The better the prep is, the better the cooking will be. And the prep is all about anticipating how many people might come, how many bookings you have, what day of the year it is. So you plan that out. So the cooking becomes easy and effective. That's how I usually do whenever I do Houdini as well. As much as I love Houdini, I spend a lot of time on the planning side because then it allows myself and the rest of the team to spend way more time working with Houdini and doing cool effects. So that's how this presentation's separated as well. Prep time. Let's start with the kind of boring part, if you say that way. I'll try to rush through this one for you guys. I do have kind of 4 different pillars whenever I start planning a project, or even when I get a bid and I try to figure out the complexity and how we can approach it. First one is know your client. It's not necessarily your final client. It's about the person you're delivering your work to. It can be your lead, your supervisor, director, art director, production coordinator, whoever it is. Get to know them. Why are you in that role for the first place? So I'll dive deeper into those as well. Know your team, who you're working with, or the team you're leading as well. All of them. Do you understand them a little bit better? And I'll show you why it's important. Know your project. I believe most people do this naturally. Whenever you get a task, you start to kind of learn a little bit more about your project and get to know yourself, especially if you are in a leadership role. It can be easy for us to forget, including myself. What are the good things about you as a leader? What are the things you need to improve at, and how you react to different situations? With further ado, why do you want to know your client? So once you are able to understand the purpose and the value you bring into the project. Let's take the laser beam, for example. If I'm an effects artist, someone asks me, you're doing this laser beam. If I do spend time and try to understand the purpose and the reason why the laser beam is in the trailer in the first place, I will understand way more about what will bring value to my client. And my client might be the director. It's not even Bungie yet. I understand that that's the type of effects they are looking for. It's the first time this massive sphere is showing any emotion towards the humans. You see, all of a sudden, you start investing yourself in the project, and any reviews you have with your clients, your directors, supervisors becomes much easier. Less of the micromanagement in terms of that pixel a bit more red, a bit more blue. It becomes way more open in terms of, okay, that looks really cool, but we might need a little bit more the light magic, which is a type of magic in the game. Learn the art style. It helps a lot as well onto the same reasoning. And after a while, you start collaborating with your client. This is a really good place to be in whenever you're doing any reviews, when you realize that you're trying to bring value to every step you do as an artist or as a supervisor, as a leader, and your clients see that as well. You get more freedom, you usually get more time, less micromanagement. And that's quite a fun kind of work environment to work on when you start trusting each other that way. Once you know that, you also want to know who you're working with or who you're leading. Let's focus a bit more on the leadership side of things. My role in this project was FX Supervisor and supportive CG Supervisor as well. I was lucky enough to be the head of FX still back then, so I knew the team members I was working with, had one-to-ones quite consistently. I knew their strengths, the skill sets, the things they wanted to learn and develop. I also knew if they came from a really challenging project just before this one. So I knew where the mental space and capacity was, because this project is a challenge. A lot of the effects are quite complex. And I allowed myself to have an open, frank conversation with the team and really utilize everyone's kind of best skill set. I talked to the team and say, look, there's some really complex effects, you're really good explosions, you will focus on that on this project, and they'll really help each and one another. Nice one. And might be a trivial thing, but work for your team. If I can spend 2 hours and I can save my team 10% of their time for a week, I'm gaining so much time from that. So, my team members' time is always more valuable than my time if I'm the supervisor. That's kind of my motto. So hopefully it helps. Know your project. I'll go a bit more in detail on this one, show a few kind of practical examples. I love briefs. It takes time to do them, but when you actually spend time doing those, you save so much time and you save so much pain from everyone involved, especially on these kind of magical and complex effects. I'll show you shortly why. I do like to prepare a risk assessment to understand what is the most impactful effects I will have in the project, or the item is this one item. If we solve that, we're gonna save the project. If we struggle there, we're gonna hinder kind of the development of the project. So just trying to minimize the risk that things can go wrong. I mentioned briefs, so yeah, I'm just gonna go to the next slide because it's more fun. I started doing these documents a few years ago, mainly because we in Axis, as you saw in the first reel, we do a lot of magic effects. Oh, excuse me. And there you go. Yeah, I'm back. And they're usually, I got so excited. And they're quite complex to develop because if you don't have any references, you don't know where to go, it's really a trial and error, right? And that's not always fun because you're both wasting time, money, but also energy from your artist or your director. So we started doing these brief documents. It takes time to do one of them, but you start collating concept art, all the information you have about the effect, the references, you start going to animatics, previews, whatever you can to really map out what this effect is about, where it belongs, how it behaves. It allows myself as a supervisor to really understand the complexities, the intrinsic aspects of it, of how it's going to work or not work, but also this becomes the effects pass #1. So this is our first effects pass usually, because we use this document, we talk to our directors, our clients, art directors, and we all kind of agree where the effects should go as a first version. So when the effects artist starts, it's a much more linear workflow, and you see soon the effects examples. But I'll just show you a few kind of these documents, see how long they can be, and they can go really into a detail level in terms of even the technical. I propose to use flip fluids for this because it creates the liquid behavior we need, things like that from myself. Yeah, these are brief documents, it works. People who have joined Axis actually really enjoy this from an artist perspective. Supervisors find it takes time to do, but then it saves a lot of time in the future. Nice one. The other thing I like doing is a risk assessment. You can call it effects risk table, but essentially all you want to know is the correlation between the complexity of the effects you were doing, the art direction it needs, because that's also can become difficult, and the volume of work in terms of how many shots and how many man hours, or how much time you're going to spend on it. So let's imagine on the x-axis we have volume. As I mentioned, it could be amount of shots, volume, how many man hours, man days, and top level is complexity. How complex it is to develop the effects in the first place. And I start mapping out. Sometimes I do this in my head, but I've actually incorporated those in my bidding documents just to make it much easier, and start analyzing, okay, we have some explosions, yeah, but it's just 3 shots, they'll be fine. Explosions, a lot of people know how to do those. Vegetation growth, they're quite complex, but also quite contained. If we solve these 3 shots, we know the cameras, and so on. And then you have laser beams, you have some simpler effects. And these effects I'm plotting out are all from that trailer we just watched. It's not all the effects, I can't include all of them, but you can see the balance. Most of the effects we created are quite complex or very heavy on the art direction, magical. So I needed quite a senior team and kind of knowing what they're doing to make this happen. But this was kind of what we figured out doing this exercise. This witness character, you saw this black guy, the bad guy, I'll talk about him in a moment. We have had him in 55 plus shots. He has effects on his body all the time, and quite complex ones as well. And we had worked with this character before, and we know it's a challenge. So this is the biggest effects we had to do. If we solve this in a good way, we know that the project will be safe, and we can spend a lot of time in making the other effects even better. So yeah, that's a risk assessment, the witness challenging guy. Last, know yourself, and might be a trivial thing to say, or I might be repeating myself. Whenever you're deep in a project, any project, whatever role you are in, it gets stressful, it gets challenging. The more you know about yourself, it's like just psychology, you know how you react in different situations. I call it a kryptonite. Some people can react, aggressively. And, I know myself, when I get stressed, I just feel I have too much to do and I don't want to plan, which is not a good thing if you're a leader. So once you know that, then the first kind of thought you have in a situation, you kind of stop, wait, and then you think it through, and you basically try to make the best decision in the moment for your team and the project as well. Yeah, just repetition, get to know yourself, it's worthwhile. When I became a leader, head of FX and Axis, I kind of stopped watching Houdini tutorials and I started reading a bunch of management books, and they're quite cool. You learn loads, and it's quite fun as well to do that. I still love Houdini though. So. Great, that's the boring stuff, guys. Are you ready for the good shit? Sorry for swearing, but about time. I'll play another cinematic for you, way shorter, this one, also effects oriented, and this one has a lot of magical effects, as you can see. Thereafter, I'll share a few of those effects we talked through already, and what were the challenges with those, and how we went about to solve them from a lead, kind of from a more higher level, rather than node by node Houdini setup. Let's go.
The universe makes us all victim and perpetrator of its infinite cruelty. You, more than any, suffer both fates. Be free.
Whoa, that guy is so scary. That was the witness once again. And this is cooking time. So what would the Houdini talk be, right, Christopher, without some behind the scenes and cool Houdini effects? So that's what we're going to show soon. And as I mentioned, I'll show you some of the effects, their challenges, and how we went about to solve those. First and foremost, the witness. You saw in that table that we realized this character would be one of the biggest, most challenging thing for us to do. And he actually had probably most of the budget of the effects as well. So in order to solve that, put together a team of a FX supervisor. Instead of supervising the whole project, his task was literally to automate this character. We really wanted to get to a level where you could get an animation in the morning and you have a rendered version towards the end of the day. That's a dream, because the last time we worked with this character, it was 20-hour simulation, for the head plume that you see soon. So put together those two team members to kind of try to solve how this character behaves. I'll show a few shots of how the witness looks. He has this massive head plume, which is basically made, at first we start doing flip fluids, but also kind of particles, it's meshed. You also have smoke combined with that, and you render everything together, and it's kind of inheriting the shading from his head onto the mesh. We want to not go into comp in every shot and trying to kind of fudge those edges together. So when you render, that's how it looks, despite being simulated various meshes. So as you can see, the witnesses, so many different shots. He also has a mystique effect on his body. And I'm going to jump into this. So he also has a mystique effect on his body, which is always on. He also does some strobing, both on his hands and capes. The hands has to be keyframed because there's an artistic direction of when it happens and how. And the cape is usually on. He also has magical effects at the bottom of his cape. So he has all these things going on all the time. But we want to render it as one character, as you would in many, rather than 5 different layers, comp it together, make sure the lighting works. And yeah, as I mentioned, the approach was to automate it, work with a team that could problem solve, solve the problems together, and it became responsible for this character. And we ended up coming to a really good place where we could actually not just take one shot from the morning to the end of the day, have it rendered. Depending on the farm, we could do multiple shots a day. And that was really important because when you're animating, you don't have all these effects on. So you animating, you see the performance, you want to see how the final look will look as quick as possible. But yeah, that was the witness, and quite pleased, because once we solved that, everything else became so much more fun. We had more time to do everything way cooler. Another effect was terraforming that you guys saw in the first cinematic I showed you. And whenever you're doing any kind of vegetation growth, there are a few challenges you face, which is they do require a lot of technical capabilities as an artist to actually make it happen. They're quite challenging, difficult to art direct, and they can easily become quite complex. We also had this other challenge where it interacted with so many different things. So we had, it breaks through a wall, interacts with a spaceship, different scales. On top of that, I got this from our concept concept team. This was made by Renee Eigner, and the art director was Mark Molnar. So thanks, guys. They created these color scripts. Really, everyone loved it. And the director came and said, "Hudson, can we do this in FX?" I looked at it and I really want to do it, and we shall do it. We shall try. We do need to agree on a few approaches to solve that. And the approach was, let's lock our cameras early enough. Let's solve timing and scale. We won't even review any leaves or kind of any additional details. Let's review it until we're happy with when things happen, how big they are, how they look in screen. From that point on, everything is just improvement of the effects. And we also had to collaborate with the environments team a fair amount to get both shaders, textures. We're also destroying a wall and a ship, so we had to make sure the geometries are watertight. So what you see here is kind of, I think this is the first version of the effects. And FX artist, Josh, I believe it was. And I knew the artist, this is the know your team, right? I knew the artist had developed their own growth system. So I say, you want to do a growth system, but in a project. So yeah, let's go. That's how we went about. And as you can see, the shots develop quite linear. From the first version, we start working, setting the scale, setting the timings to the final version. The cameras are kind of locked. It looks exactly like the color script, as you can see here. That's the color script we got weeks earlier before we even started FX. And see what you see right now on screen, we actually reviewed that a few times because that is the bulk of the work. That's the timing, that's the shape language, that's the art direction for those tendrils. And when you compare to the color scripts, they as one-to-one as you can get in a world that, in the work we do. Colors might be different, but the full kind of play out of the shot is the same. And that really allowed us to make the best of the time. We could get into the details. It also allowed us to solve problems such as this one, where you have multiple team members working on the same effect. Most game cinematics, you don't have months of development to do. You might have just a few weeks to do a effect. 2 weeks, 3 weeks, sometimes just days, because it's such a high-paced environment and you're doing many different effects. by setting the timing, setting the cameras, and locking those, and everyone agreed on they're happy with it, you have 3 different artists, one working with destruction, one working with the vegetation growth, another one working with laser beam on the same shot. And really, kind of simultaneously, you can bring it together. That's what I wanted to show. And the collaboration with the environments team helped a hell of a lot. That was vegetation growth, love it. Something else, there was another challenge on this one, was the Traveler's first laser. As I mentioned to you, this is a character. You know, this is a massive moon-sized character. That's how it behaved in this cinematic. So it's a very symbolic moment for any players on Destiny 2. And we understood that. We also did not just want to do another laser. So this laser had a bit more character. It had a bit of gravity behavior, had some fractal in its core, and so on. And we also saw it from multiple stages. We are going to be inside the laser. We've been outside from wide angle, from the side. We're going to shoot it out. We're also going to turn it off and kill it. So there's multiple things we do with that laser. It's not just one shot, reuse the same asset. And it's comp heavy. You'll see shortly. It's a very comp heavy effect. So we need to create a collaboration between effects and comp. How do we do that? First of all, because it's such a art directed and is almost like a character, it's a character doing a behavior, we do work quite closely with our concept team, as you saw for the terraforming. In the brief documents, let's figure out what this thing will do, how it behaves, what's the important aspects that it has to be doing through the trailer. And also had this idea of, instead of recruiting another effects artist, then I have 2 people maybe working on this laser, different variations, we actually used one of our more senior effects artists who did really good comps and got 2 people together, one focusing on 3D, the other one focusing on the comp. So utilize the strengths of both individuals. We in Axis, we do a lot of comp ourselves. When you're doing magical effects, it's quite important. When you're working a more VFX kind of scenario, you have maybe a comp team supporting you as well, which is really good. So it really depends on the project. But this one, we were driving a lot of the effects comps within the effects team. And as you can see, the first step was figure this laser out in 2D. Started doing those, step by step. What's going to happen? See, a talented 2D artist can do many versions a day. If you go to this level of detail in 3D, you're talking about weeks of work. And then maybe you hit something wrong and you have to redo it again. So we did this process, start figuring out the important aspects of the laser and how we're going to implement them in 3D. At some point, you say, okay, awesome, guys, thank you so much. Let's do the work. And then, as I mentioned, brought together effects and comp. You saw the previous presentation, it was really comp heavy. That was awesome to see, really enjoyed that. And this is just kind of a slower pace way of showing you how simple layers, each layer having a purpose, and you create these simple layers and you put them together in comp, you can actually create a really, really nice looking shot. And to do that, you do want to have the understanding of, from an effects artist, anything you create is for the final picture. But from a compositing point of view, anything you receive, how do you utilize that the best? See, I think this shot here had, 20-something layers? And at some point it had more, but then we questioned, we don't need that, we don't need that, we don't need that. Some of these layers you only use for a few frames. That's okay. So that's how the Traveler laser was done. And effects with comp, double trouble. That's what I think. If you like Dragon Ball Z, love it. More effects and comp on the next effects is the portal. This one was quite interesting. I learned a few things when we started doing this. It had its own challenges because it had to have depth, even though it's a flat. It's literally a flat card. Kind of from our client say, look, it's a flat card, but within you have depth, you have parallax, and so forth. When we got the first concept, we realized as well that the texture is really complex. And the main brief was fractal-based textures inside. And we had some time allocated to do the in FX. And I thought, anyone here done fractals before? Anyone? Try it, it's quite fun if you do. But try to art direct fractals. It's not that easy, because it's maths, right? That's why they're fractals. So we can try to figure out a better way of doing that. And I'll come to that in a moment. It also had multiple layers that kind of needed to cooperate, have interaction with it, even though it had depth and parallax. So how did we solve it? There was another point in time that I decided, well, we have this budget to do this portal in FX, but maybe it's better for us to cooperate with the environments team because they're really good at creating these complex textures. Maybe we should just collaborate together. So we talked amongst each other and we decided, let's create a parallax in depth. Let's use UV maps, quite complex kind of motion on the UV maps, and create the depth with those kind of, almost like you do in a game engine. And that worked really nicely, except this is kind of what I learned. I didn't pay attention enough to our camera moves. We didn't have much camera moves. So these are early tests, really fast, and then we slow it down and adjust and create the different layers. They work really nice, especially when the camera starts rotating around. You can feel the parallax on the different layers and how they behave, and you can sense the depth. This is a miss. See, that's why you do those brief documents, so you don't miss these things. I missed completely that our cameras are static, and the parallax would not be as apparent. So we got to this level. We're all really happy about it. Started kind of comping a shot, like that's great, but then our camera's static. So we recreated some of that parallax in comp as well, together with effects. Then the result looks really cool. We used the effects time and budget mainly to enhance kind of the surroundings of the portal, as well as these additional shots. But yeah, so you learn a few things doing this, and thanks to the environment team for doing such a good work on this one. Last but not least, explosions. Surprisingly, the absolute easiest thing for us to do in this project. You might not think, because they're big and there are loads of them. Yeah, the main challenge we had on these explosions is it's not a hero effect. Even though they're big, they're massive, destroying massive ships, they're not a hero effect. They're just a supportive, they play a supportive role in the story. They're just an amp up to the stakes. The hero effects are the witness against the traveler, the bad guy against the good guy. This is just to tell us how big this war is. So in that case, sometimes you don't want to spend all your budget on those 3-4 shots. On the other hand, they should look explosive, they should look big and be as cool as possible. And it's also quite dependent on camera and pacing. So we tried a few approaches, but we kind of decided and say, you know what? Let's do a library-based system and scatter that. That's our first step. Step 2, if we think we need additional bespoke kind of simulations for that single shot of this area, we add those as well. So just one senior effects artist, Mikhail on this one, he gave free reins to start creating the explosions. It's like, okay, make sure they look good. We're happy with those. Even, create 4. Let's not do 15. Do 4. Put them together. Let's start scattering. How does it work? Timing. Create a nice timing. And this is actually one of the first versions. Like, okay, give free rein, create a nice timing. We flip hooked, I think, once or twice with just kind of spheres to feel the pace. Boom, 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 boom. We do a lot of sound effects because it helps. We had early animations. As you can see, now, from that point on, it just got improved and improved and improved and improved. But generally, everyone liked the first pass. Everyone liked the timings and so on. And what did we do and what did we not do? We did not destroy all the ships because that would be extremely time-consuming. What did we do? We used all these explosions, the timing, the pacing of the shot, and worked with animation, so it looked really kick-ass for the time we had to do those. Yeah. You guys tired of effects? It's closing time. Back to the restaurant analogy. So, closing the restaurant. Thank you all for coming. And if there are 3 things you should take away today with you, doesn't matter if you're a lead, supervisor, an artist, producer, or the side effects team, is prepare. If you get into a project, the prep time is quite important. It's not always fun. We are artists. We started doing effects because I want to explode stuff, not spreadsheets. But see, if I spend 2 hours there and that can give me 2 days of Houdini work later on down the line, I will happily do it. So remember, it gives you a lot. When you're cooking, when you're in the depth of the project and you're doing things on a day-to-day basis, keep the flow, keep the momentum, keep a nice culture with your team. End of the day, we all chose this industry because we like it. It should be fun as well. So try to enjoy the process, if I can say like that. And finally, might be repetition. You might not know it. You might know it already. Remember, if you're a leader, be the best leader you can for your team. Work for your team on a daily basis. Because if you can make 10 people do a really good work, instead of solving one FX, you're probably on a very good kind of trajectory of success. And the witness says, thanks for your time. And I have another thank you. Thank you. Thanks.
There we go. Questions? While you're thinking about questions, 3 months of prep for the 2 days here at FMX by the marketing team at SideFX.
Yeah, that's it.
It's all prep, all prep.
And you asked me last week, man.
Questions, comments?
Shoot on, folks. Can ask anything you need or want.
Yeah. Let me get the mic to you. 1 sec.
Where should I stop? This slide or this slide? Would you prefer? Vote. That one? That one? No? Okay.
Hello.
I did.
Hi. I was just wondering what quality, and you're on the witness's head, the bubbling stuff and the really cool faces coming out. Why did you need to use the flip? Why not just say some objects and then taking the smoke and converting that to geo? What was the quality in the flip sim that you got from that? I was just interested.
I'll play for you. So flip was the first trial.
Yeah.
I think we believe we use a flip to detect the smoke, that detect particles, that creates the mesh. So that's the trajectory. And we try different versions. Flip fluids had, if you try pop flip fluids as well, you do get the fluid behavior. You can all of a sudden add viscosity to it in a different way as well. So it just became by trial and error. We tried these different things. We really wanted to contain it as well as a whole. So to answer your question, because it is a hard one, you can do it in many different ways. But from trial, I think we did give up on flip when we started automating it. But the first time we did the witness, because this is the second project we work with the witness, we did kind of go flip approach at first as a base sim. And then we went pyro instead. Cool. You remember? But yeah, we choose both.
Cool.
It's just, you see the final product, and you can guess, oh, I would do it that way. But when we had this, the concept for the witness, really cool, really complex. We did not know how to start. That was one of the few effects I could not do a brief document for. Right. Me, myself, and 2 FX supervisors, we kind of like, how do we do this? The head plume, so we tried to solve it different ways. Good question, though. I hope. Sorry if I'm not being too detailed about it.
No, good answer. No, thanks. Yeah, cheers.
Anyone else? Shoot on.
Hello, Hudson.
Hello.
Good back answers here. The transitions from the SSS on the witness to the volume, like how did you do that nicely?
You guys love the witness. Let me try to remember. The first time we did the witness was One Shot Wonder. I actually don't have it here. It's like 2,000 frames. That one, we had to use a bit more comp. In this version, Alexis, was just shading, really. So our shader, the mesh, did I break it again? There we go. The mesh is actually underneath his face, just underneath. And there is an alpha ramp that follows. And we, at some point, the alpha ramp, some shots will come a bit too low, so we actually will see his scalp underneath. So we just had to maintain that in a good level. So that's how we did it. It literally has 2 meshes on top of each other with alpha ramped based on distance and based on other things as well, on masking.
Cool.
Did I answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Nice, no worries. Sorry for missing your talk, by the way.
Amazing, Hudson. Thanks for sharing that.
No worries.
Thank you.